Well, hello. I'm Dom, and I'm the host of Horror House, True Crime, and the Macabre. Do you have an interest in true crime, cults, the paranormal, and all things macabre? Then Horror House may be the new podcast for your rotation. Join me every Friday as I discuss stomach-churning true crime, mystifying cases of the unexplained, crazy cults, and more, presented with a side of dry British humour. Horror House is available wherever you find your podcasts, and you can find the podcast on social media at horrorhouse_pod. Until next time, stay spooky, my friends.
The subject of today's episode is a cavalcade of holiday horror, including the torture murder of a 15-year-old boy due to what else but witchcraft, the tale of 4 people's personal relationships and one of their gruesome deaths, the demonic haunting of the streets of Dublin, a dispute between friends which leads to an axe murder, and the origins of quite possibly the most notorious form of holiday torture that a particular group of people have to endure. All with a very special guest. Today, we cover Christmas time true crime. I'm Kevin Young.
I'm Dan Horgan.
And I'm Phil Better.
Now, wait, no, stop the fucking music. You say it right, goddammit. Say it.
Fine. I am the award-winning podcasting mogul Phil Better.
Holy fuck, he said it.
Yeah, the creamy Canadian.
The creamy Canadian has entered the chat.
Yeah, I'll give you a bit of context.
Hold on, and this is torture, especially for Phil. It's gonna be great.
My apologies.
Oh, this is
about
gonna be
the this is torture part there for a second.
yeah,
I got lost in the romance. So it was.
Right,
Give a little context to the creamy Canadian thing is so Phil and I play Call of Duty online and Battlefield online together an awful lot, and he tends to join the group chat in there when a creamy Canadian has joined the chat, and it became a bit of a running joke. Like we were sitting there one night playing away. I have a recording of it on my PlayStation, and we're all playing Battlefield, and it pops up, Phil Better has come online. And straight away I said, hey, what's the bets? Phil's going to join the chat. I go, creamy Canadian has joined the chat. And next thing you see, Phil's name pops up, a creamy Canadian, and he tripped up over his words. It was really funny.
Oh, fuck. All right, guys. Before we get into
torturous day.
Yeah, before we get into any more shit, a call to action, right, Phil? You do the call to action.
There you go.
All right, email us, torturepod@gmail.com. Message us on our Twitter, Insta, Hive app, @torturepod. Buy us a fucking coffee at buymeacoffee.com/torturepod. Go to our link tree on our socials and donate. Rate, review wherever you can. Again, the first 100 will get a call out on the show. Phil is on the show because he filled out a thing with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and we were happy enough to have him on.
I've always wanted to be. My last wish was to be on this podcast to be tortured.
He said, John Cena, no. Disneyland, fuck off. I want to be on a medium-ranged podcast. So before we get started, let's hear from our guest, host of the Invest in Yourself podcast series, the Invest in Yourself digital series, co-host of the Stock Dirty to Me podcast, producer of over 20 podcasts like Money Grows on Trees, CX Sports, Cloud Chronicles, and Talking with Experts, some of which are in the top 4% of listens in the world, host of the Phil Better Show, your favorite Canadian and mine, the award-winning podcast mogul, Phil Better. And then we have the crowd
cheering.
Hold on. Wait, no.
Oh, we got the soundboard out. Yes, that was the right one, guy.
I'll find it eventually.
Can we please play the song "Blame Canada" when that starts up?
But anyways, I am Phil Bear, the podcasting award-winning mogul. Whatever name these gentlemen have decided to give me, I go by Podcast Mogul because I love helping podcasters make money from their show. Because I think it's a medium that everybody deserves, and it's not easy to make money, but it's simple to make money behind podcasting. So I want to help as many podcasters get to a point where they're able to make money from their podcasts or whatever their success is. My eventual goal is 100 million podcasts out there. So because right now we're only at 4 million, and I use air quotes specifically because there's only like 59,000 active podcasts.
59 active podcasts. Yay, we're one!
Well,
how are we not
sometimes
higher?
Feels like that. There's only like 5
All right,
podcasts that are actually posted. Yeah, right. You guys are in the crew. But yeah, like there's approximately 59,000 or 69,000 active podcasts, or 129. I don't know. My good friend Alex San Filipino actually talked about this. He had a post about it. Anyways, so my goal is to get to 100 million podcasts. My goal, I want to see 100 million podcasts out there, 100 million people making a living from podcasting, and it's super simple. It just takes hard work, and you guys are already doing it. My only critique I would give to you guys is use one call to action. What is the one thing you want people to do? So if you want them to buy you a coffee, that's the only thing you talk about. You can say it 1,000 times in the episode, but that's the only thing you talk about. So if you want them to subscribe to it on Apple, all you do is, hey, make sure you subscribe to us on Apple. Hey, make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify, the next episode. One call out per episode. Say it as many times as you want, but that one call to action should be one single thing, because when you're listening to a podcast, do you have the time to do 15 calls to action? No.
Yeah, but Phil, we're greedy.
Sometimes we'll forget the one.
We're greedy people,
greedy,
right? We want
but
people
here's the thing.
to email us. We want people to like and subscribe.
But
We want people to click that bell icon or all that other stuff, whatever the hell they do. What do they do on the talk text?
If you're
Right swipe. If you see us on Tinder, right swipe on us. All that shit. We want all of it, Phil. Every ounce of it.
I understand you want them to do all that, but asking them to do that all in one episode will actually stop them from doing any action, because they get this overwhelming of choice. And when and it's been proven that when humans have too much choice, they get paralyzed. They don't know what to do.
Option paralysis.
Option paralysis. Yeah. So why are you doing option paralysis to your listeners? And it's hurting you. So if you give them the one option, write to us, and that's the only thing you do for every single episode, people will start writing to you. But right now, write to us. Subscribe to us. Do this, do that.
Don't subscribe to us.
Only write to us. There's the only call to action. So if you got through the whole call to action, this is what I want you guys to do. Write to them at torturepod@gmail.com. Tell them about a crazy torture story in your neighborhood, or a crazy torture story that you want them to cover.
Holy
You
fuck,
never
your
know.
neighborhood.
You have a torture story in your neighborhood. Yes, please.
Well, I thought my neighbor beating up his wife. What?
There's thousands of those. You grew up in Dublin, right?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Yeah.
So you're telling a story about a freaking torture story in Dublin.
I didn't grow
in your neighborhood, but
no, it didn't exactly happen in my neighborhood, and it was a long time before my time. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Well, it could be some 18-year-old could hear it and say, "Think
torturepod@gmail.com." Like what Phil said. That's your call to action today, people. You've already missed out on the song promo. So sorry for that, but you never know. First 100 people, we said we're going to do something special for the first 100 people. We don't know what it is yet, but it'll be something special.
Email you.
Yeah,
100
exactly.
people who email you. 100 people who comment.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. Engage somehow other than just liking a comment on Instagram. That doesn't. You can't just heart us on Instagram. That doesn't.
I was going to say, if you're within the first 100 people to email us, we will get you an in-person live meet and greet with the Podcast Mogul. Award-winning Podcast Mogul, Phil Better. Right? And
totally free.
yeah, completely free. Right?
They have to fly their
Phil will fly you to him. Right? You get the free trip to Canada.
All expenses paid.
All expenses paid, yeah. Business class, obviously, because we know Phil's rolling in that podcast Oprah money now at this stage. Yeah.
He'll take that you to his favorite Tim Hortons.
Actually, after having I just finished watching the documentary thing. We finished watching the Pepsi "Where's My Jet" thing. I'm going to end that whole fake promotion we just did with "I'm just kidding." We are not doing that.
Yeah.
Do not take that. Do not hold us to that. Sorry, Joey.
I'll do the speed reading thing at the very end of the show.
Yeah.
So
Feel
fast
better
I
for
can't
that.
understand it. Be like, it's in there.
Yeah.
It's in there. Okay, well, you know
You're
what,
an actual individual.
Dan? The last episode we did something I absolutely hate podcasts do, and we bantered literally over half of the show before we got to the.
Shit, we're bantering again. Let's go. Let's
we're
just go
doing
for
it
the
again.
first story.
And this is, and we have a lot of shit. So, who wants
let's
to
do
go
this thing.
first? I can go first. Dan,
Let me,
Phil,
since
who
I'm the
wants-
guest, I'm going to go first because I'm going to hog all the time.
Fucking A, let's go. Let's hear from
So,
Phil.
unfortunately, there's not a lot of Christmas torture stories in Montreal, which is surprisingly weird. But it is holiday based. My story.
That's fine.
It's on what we call here in Quebec la fête nationale, the national fight festival or party, Saint Jean. So it's weird. Montreal has a really weird history. Anyways, so this takes place on June 27th, 1879. Okay, it's a beautiful day. People are partying. It's a lot of fun, right? And it is a huge party, specifically in the part of the town that this story takes place, which is Griffintown, Montreal, which is an Irish community. It's a historically Irish community. It's where I live. It's literally like this actually happened probably about 10 minutes from where I am currently telling this story. Okay, so in this Irish community, it's mainly, people who, it's a 19th century shanty town. It's a shanty town where the poor people live. So you of course, you have your stables, your taverns, your flour mills, the smelting works, the warehouses. You got drifters, laborers, and families all living in this really superbly amazing community, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have two sex workers. Okay, you have Mary Gallagher and Susie Kennedy.
Now
You
you're
have
talking.
a lot more than two sex workers.
Well,
Yeah.
this story in this town, but this story takes place with just two of the multitude of sex workers that are in their
Fair
place, Mary Gallagher and Susie Kennedy, and a brand new client, one Mr. Michael Flanagan. I think it's Flanagan. Yeah, Flanagan.
Flanagan would be how you pronounce it. Yeah.
Flanagan.
Flanagan.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
Just
Michael. Anyways, and it takes place early in the morning with some bottles of whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So how the story goes is that Mary and Susie were good friends, and they were looking for some more fun after the major partying of Saint Jean was done, and they happened to bump into this one little gentleman named Michael. And they're all drunk, they're partying, they're drinking at the taverns. They convince him to go drinking some more, and then they're like, okay, we don't have any more money to pay, so we need to go. But I believe it was I believe it was, yes. So Susie suggests that they go back to her apartment. And now her apartment is just 2 floors. There's the bottom family and Susie's up top, I believe. Yeah, so it's Susie's flat. They're inside. They start partying, drinking. Stuff gets wild. And then the tenants downstairs hear arguments. They're not sure. It's really hard to make out what's going on. And then they hear a thump. And a thump. And people
Phil taking out his Mickey and it hitting the floor. That's what that was.
Yeah. I wasn't there yet. So they're a little confused. There's no more arguing. And all of a sudden they're sitting down there, they're eating, and then drip, drip, drip. And they look over and there's a pool of blood on the floor. And they look up and they see that there's red marks from the blood. It looks like blood dripping from the ceiling. Because you have to remember, this isn't like modern day ceilings. These are like wood slabs.
Yeah, there's just like wood panels.
Yeah, it's the cheapest things that we can put together. So like you can hear everything between apartments. And then so they're like, what the hell? They call the cops. And as they're starting to call the cops, you hear a voice yell from above. I've wanted revenge for a long time, and I finally got it. It's a female voice. And people are like, what the heck? And so the cops come in, rush into the flat, and they find Mary's body laying on the floor in her thin cotton gown. Her head is severed. And it's in a bucket. And you look, and there's Susie covered in blood.
Bet you Susie did it.
And Susie's just like crazed, covered in blood. And Michael is dozing in the front room of the apartment, sleeping off.
Yeah.
The drunken stupor. She killed her friend over a client.
Well, I mean, got to get that D, I guess.
We've all been there.
You know, it was this 8. What you say? This
Wait.
Yes.
Here's
See that?
here's
Like I
even
said,
more.
I was gonna say sorry. I was gonna say that was obviously, like I said, was the fadump was the client taking Phil Better, award-winning podcast Mogul Phil Better, producing the goods, and they got jealous. And the guy,
Here's the
Michael,
thing.
had to sleep off the shock of seeing somebody so
She was
big.
passed out from shock. Here's the thing. So, Susie got sentenced to hang for her murder, right? But it got communed to life in prison. She ended up being in Kingston Penitentiary for 16 years, and she died from tuberculosis because it's frigging 1800s.
Yeah.
You know, like the quality of life is not high.
Yeah, somebody farts and you
But-
get TB. Yeah.
Pretty much. On the day that she was sentenced to die, Michael was lost his footing apparently on a boat in the Peel Basin, which is like the harbor pretty much, and fell through the ice and drowned.
Fucking hell.
Some people believe, and you have to remember, this is like an Irish community, so very superstitious at the time,
Yeah.
very Catholic, you know, very superstition high.
Mhm.
A legend was passed down that people saw Mary Gallagher push Michael because it was Michael's fault that she got beheaded. And so there's a legend that every 4 years or so, you can see Mary Gallagher strolling the streets of Griffintown looking for her head.
Nice.
I was gonna
Good
say,
old
be great.
ghost story to start us off.
I gotta say, now,
like that.
I just got a great idea for a Halloween costume. Go dressed as a woman in a white gown with a bucket with my head in it. There you go. Sort
There's
of.
been a few, and it's so crazy. I've heard of this story. So growing up in Montreal, I've heard of this story, right?
Yeah.
Like it's one of the legends you hear. You start off hearing the headless ghost. That's what we hear it as, and then you learn more about it. However, what really like sunk in and made it like more real was I did a ghost walk in Montreal, and it's I highly suggest you do the ghost walks in Montreal because you have an actress or an actor telling you these different stories, but like giving it more as if they're living the piece and they're dressed in period pieces.
I was gonna say it's like a
So it
theater
just
piece.
Sells.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like they're in their theater
It's cool.
of like the 1800s and all this, and you're hearing all these amazing stories that history doesn't really tell. You don't learn in history class because
Well,
it's like,
yeah.
oh, it's not a world event; it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But then you get to know a bit about. You learn about the little stories. Like there was a family that got the guy left his family to die in this hospital and ended up dying on the road by this apparently vengeful ghost that took him in. Like there's that story as well. You learn that. It's like, what the hell? So many great stories in Montreal about our ghosts. Surprisingly, we're a young city, but we have a lot of ghost stories.
And you
So
too
that's
can
my closure. It's not
learn
that-
all these ghost stories if you send us an email and you're the first 100 and you win a trip to go see Phil Better, and you can go and take the tour. Like and subscribe, hit that bell icon. Actually, no, wait, don't. No, sorry. Just-
No, don't do any of
just
that.
keep out
Don't do
there.
anything other than email us.
Yes,
Yeah.
just email. Come on, guys,
Yeah.
get it together.
You said it was in the 1860s or something like that?
This took place. It was 18. Hold on, I have. It was 18. It was 1879.
I
June
mean, you know, the
27th.
cops ran in there, saw her covered in blood, and they were like, gross, clean that up. What happened here? Because
Why are you
Honestly.
covered in blood, ma'am?
I have a Sasshole after jumping up onto me.
Sasshole! Oh,
Sassholes here.
dude.
Hi, kitty. Oh,
You
so
go away.
cute. If you check out the show
she
notes, you'll
banged my
find some
microphone.
links that we want you to check out. But make sure you email torturepod@gmail.com.
Yeah, I have all the links in the show notes afterwards. A lot of links in the show notes afterwards. All right, well, Phil, thank you so much for that one. That's a fun one.
That's cool.
well.
Yeah, I like those kind of urban legendy stories. You know.
Good. I'm glad I could have provided some urban legendness.
All right, Dan, do you want to do one of yours? Or,
I'll
all right, go.
Right, so here's the thing: is that I have two stories, which I'll obviously start with one of them. I'm not going to tell the two of them straight in a row, but one of them is based.
You do one, I'll do one.
Yeah, one of them is not based around Christmas, which is the one I'm going to say for after, which is the bigger one. It is based around the holiday period, the Irish Christmas, around Paddy's weekend. So not Patty's, Americans. Just throwing it out there, American listeners. It is not St. Patty's. Just going to say. Anyway, so has anybody here ever heard of the tale of the Dolocher?
Have not.
It's an Irish folklore kind of legend. Well, there's debate over the exact way it's pronounced. I've heard people say Dolocher or Dolocher. It's the Dolocher. I'm talking to my wife about it, and because it's Irish descendant name for Dolocher appears to be the correct way. But anyway, we'll also be travelling back to the 18th century, but it is in good old Dublin. Well, I read two different variations of this. One of them says it was in the 19th century, one says it was in the 18th, because apparently there's a diary entry discovered for somebody describing what happened from first person perspective, and that was from the 19th century. But anyway, so in Dublin you have an area known as the Liberties, which is very close to Dublin city centre, and in the Liberties a body of a woman was discovered. She had been raped and murdered, and shortly after the discovery of her body, a man by the name of Dolocher is arrested. He is tried and convicted of the crime, and he is swiftly sentenced to death by hanging. So Dolocher is sent to a prison known as Black Dog Prison, which is located in an area of Dublin that used to be referred to as New Hall Market, which if there are any Irish listeners, it's where Corn Market is now, which is near Christ Church Cathedral. You can all Google that if you want. Yeah. Hold on. Sorry. Apologies. Cat's knocking down the books. Get out of here.
Yeah, I could hear it.
The prison was originally built as a square tower that was known as Brown's Castle, and it later became a tavern and an inn, and then it was later used as a debtor's prison for all the rooms that were in it. And up until about the late 18th century, it stopped being used as a prison. So allegedly, you could actually stay in one of the numerous rooms within it if you paid to stay. So like many homeless would pay whatever the little tiny amount was to be able to actually get a bed for the night. So Dolocher himself managed to technically escape being executed by taking his own life in his cell. But that didn't mean that the men and women of both Black Dog Prison or Dublin would actually be able to escape him, allegedly. Mm-hmm. So a few days later, one of the prison sentries was found beaten and unconscious at the end of his shift. He had been mauled and his clothes were in tatters. There were a couple of different variations in accounts. You see that asshole behind me?
I see him.
Just my apologies.
It's literally all I could focus on is just the tail.
Yeah, well, no, I'll tell you what, I might get rid of her and then continue. Give me 1 second, sorry. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just this little... Where are you? So, anyway, as I was saying.
Yeah.
So Dolocher managed to escape his execution by hanging himself in a cell. And so a few days later, said a sentry was found beaten and unconscious at the end of his shift. He had been mauled and his clothes were in tatters. And again, as I was saying, the couple of variations that I read was one stating that he had suffered from a form of stroke from the fear, from fear, where it paralysed his entire left side initially and for a short time, and he couldn't speak. Now, when he eventually came to and he regained his speech, he had stated that he had heard strange noises coming from Dolocher's now empty cell. And when he investigated the sound, something rushed at him from inside the darkness of the cell, and attacked him. And he swore that the figure that attacked him was a demonic man with the head of a pig. So, yep. There were more talks over short period of time of strange noises and numerous sightings of the demonic pig in or around Black Dog Prison. And it was swiftly believed that the pig demon was the spirit of Dolocher, who had come back to terrorise everybody at Black Dog. A week later, a sentry went to relieve another from duty, only to find that he was missing, his rifle and clothes the only thing remaining in his post. And then the terror of...
He just ran.
Then the terror of...
Fuck that, I'm running.
Wouldn't you if a big giant black pig man was chasing you? But so the terror then spread outside the prison into the streets of Dublin. Night after night, women were attacked in the area around the Liberties and around Black Dog Prison, in an area that was ironically actually nicknamed Hell, and that was nicknamed Hell due to the amount of brothels, gambling houses and taverns that were in the area, so it was very kind of place of
Named
ill repute.
ironically because that's not hell. That would be heaven. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Think of all the drinking. But yeah, so that was also described as half man, half pig. And night after night, fear grew stronger around the streets of Dublin as the mention of the black pig was basically on everyone's tongues, and everyone was basically afraid to go out alone. Other areas of the city were also starting to become fearful as more and more reported attacks involving a demonic pig man took place elsewhere, and it appeared that Dolocher's vengeful spirit was kind of spreading further afield. So the name Dolocher, which is what it's referred to as, allegedly grew from the fact that they believed that this was this man Dolocher's evil spirit. But in Dublin, when you say sometimes you say there's literally like a D.
Yeah.
So it's nearly like D apostrophe Dolocher, so it became Dolocher.
Doubles. The Dolocher.
So Dublin City itself was petrified of this demonic beast roaming the streets and preying on women every single night. So numerous pigs were sacrificed and culled in an attempt to ward off this evil. And I think it's actually kind of funny though when you think about it, the fact that they sacrificed pigs to ward off an evil pig. If anything, that would piss them off a bit more, that you're killing their brethren.
Yeah,
You know?
a little bit, maybe.
I know, but sure, look, that's the way they thought, obviously, back then. But shortly after the culling of the numerous pigs, the attacks stopped. It was coming into springtime. Nothing happened. Summer came and passed. Still no more attacks. The people of Dublin were finally relaxing after a long winter of fear. And then in November, pretty much a year after Dolocher's suicide, and when the first attacks began, they began again. And there's one night, a local blacksmith went into his tavern, and while he was inside, it began to rain heavily. As he hadn't brought a cloak in with him, the tavern owner offered him his wife's cloak to shield him from the rain on his travel home.
I'm so glad you said cloak after that. Offered him his
wife, yeah.
Keep here. This
Offered him his wife.
Yeah.
We're like, is he going to continue the statement, or are we just
wrong
is it just
place
a
for a
wife?
comma? Anyway, so he offered the man his wife's cloak, and seeing what was believed to be a woman walking down the streets, Dolocher attacked what would turn out to be his last victim. The blacksmith was very easily able to overpower this being, despite the fact of the fear that was obviously onset him because of seeing this demonic pig attack. Laid him out on the floor, managed to rip the pig head off, and dragged his ass down to the nearest police station. The man behind the pig's head was none other, as it turned out, than the sentry who had gone missing the previous year, who had taken the opportunity to basically strike fear to everyone by using this pig's head. He started this in order to basically, so that when he did attack somebody, a woman, to mug them, they wouldn't fight back. They'd be so fearful, thinking that was a demon. I didn't get this person's name. Isn't anywhere. I couldn't see who the person's name was, and as well as that's funny because the blacksmith's name I couldn't find anywhere. And this guy Dolocher, this rapist murderer guy, is the guy whose name lives on kind of in legend as a result of him just happening to kill himself beforehand. You know, which is just complete barmy.
So This whole
This is-
story takes place in about an hour, and what they do is they capture him with elaborate rope and net trap, and then they come in and they rip his head, the pig head off, and they're like, it's not the Dolocher, it's old Mr. Sanders Sentry from the.
Yeah,
I would have
that's
gotten
exactly.
away from it too if it wasn't for you rotten kids. And then the Harlem Globetrotters fucking pull up. They're like, hey guys, spinning fucking basketball.
You pesky
They
bastards.
Scooby-Dooed the motherfucker. He's
Oh yeah. I forgot to mention, the blacksmith was obviously had his pet dog with him who was stoned off his nuts,
oh, Rory's red raggy.
But the whole time, when I
What I love about this,
yeah.
the main person that the story is about has nothing to do with
Exactly. I
It has zero to do with this story.
Yeah, this guy just happened to kill
Yet
himself.
it's all about him.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking, like it's a vengeful go. Like I figured, I thought it was either a feral pig and people were just stoned off their asses back then, or drunk off their asses, considering it's Ireland. And I'm not being
Racist much?
Stereotypical. No,
You better,
stereotypical.
you better
You're white,
apologize.
I'm white.
You better
We're the same.
apologize for that now, Mr. Canadian.
I apologize
that.
for stating a stereotypical fact of the Irish people. But
yeah, they're
like
pretty balls
I
out
thought it was a
drunk,
feral
to be honest.
pig at start, but no, it's oh my god, that's
Yeah,
It's a
it's.
Scooby-Doo
I
episode.
was
It's an
thinking.
Irish
Yeah, I was
Scooby-Doo
thinking.
fucking Scooby-Doo episode.
I was thinking the exact same thing the whole way through it as well. I was like, when I first read it, I was like, this is like Scooby Doo, and the whole fact that this whole story is to do with this guy who had nothing to do with it whatsoever. It's like, it's I don't even know. It's kind of, can you imagine if you died tomorrow and then suddenly your name lived on for centuries or for hundreds of years, just by pure happenstance? Like, just nothing to do with what happens.
Wow.
I know, it's just you died on the spot that a vengeful ghost appeared.
Yep.
Jeez, and now it's called the Phil Ghost.
Yeah, the follicker.
No. The award-winning podcast Mogul, Phil Ghost.
Yeah, trying to run away. Oh,
It's
the award-winning
ghost
podcast.
of the award-winning Pagas Mogul Phil Better, but it's not really him. It's just someone pretending to be a ghost of him.
And you have to say that all while you're about a foot up in the air with your legs just going as fast as possible before you take off with the smoke behind you.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell.
All right, Kevin.
All right.
Your turn to go with your story.
Yes, so this one is torture-y and very true crimey. So hold on to your butts because it's going to get upsetting. So on February 21st, 1983, in Zaire, previously known as the Democratic Republic of Congo, Magali Bamu was born to her parents, Pierre and Jacqueline. The family moved to Paris, with Pierre opening his carpentry business, designing, manufacturing furniture. He later moved him and his wife back to the Congo to continue the business. So 13-year-old Magali stayed behind with her mother's niece, Phoebe, and her husband, Ferdinand, in Dagenham, East London. And apparently she was treated pretty horribly. So get a little insight into where her head is at. She was treated pretty much like a slave. Later in her life, she would meet Eric Bicabui through a mutual friend, and the two would hit it off pretty quick. He was a football coach, and the relationship started off great. It didn't last long, but we'll get back to that in a little bit. Unfortunately,
Question.
yeah.
Yeah. When you say football coach, are we talking the European football or the North American football?
This is
Association soccer.
Yes,
Association
this
football.
I would imagine this is soccer and not
Okay.
American.
I just wanted to verify because you never know with you crazy Europeans.
That's true.
I'm sorry.
That's
What?
true.
I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. Just to get aware, how many feet are actually used in a game of American football?
Well, I mean, you use the 1 foot to kick the ball.
How many
You
times?
also use the feet to move
How
the
many
ball.
times? How many times you
Several
kick said
times
ball?
throughout the several times. Sometimes the entire game is won just by the feet.
It's true.
It is.
It's very true.
That's how you usually measure in yards, but okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So later in life, she would marry. I told you that. Unfortunately, Eric became extremely controlling, verbally abusive, and refused to let her wear makeup or even see her friends. Now, Eric was born in the Congo as well, also in 1983. His mother died during childbirth. So throughout his life, his father taught him about a type of witchcraft called kindoke, which was widely believed in the Congo to be responsible for child possession. Now, when a child is pointed out, usually by a religious leader or elder, as possessing kindoke, steps would be taken to rid the child of the evil spirit that was possessing them. This included beatings, salvation submission, water deprivation, and continuous prayer without food. And it was believed during this possession the evil spirits has taken over the child, so they are unable to feel pain from the horrible mutilations and beatings, which is obviously not the case. But, people are going to believe the stupid shit they believe. Simple things children do are viewed as indications of kindoke possession, such as wetting the bed, biting your nails, or stealing a pencil, which is oddly specific. What did he steal?
That happened
stole
once.
like 30
Happened
bucks
one
from
time.
me. Okay. He stole my fucking TV. All right. He stole a pencil. Whoa! Wait a minute. Pump the fucking brakes.
Condemned to hell.
So, these are very ordinary. These are things that all kids do. All my kids have stolen pencils. But they have extremely dangerous consequences. So during their relationship, Eric would talk about visions he would have as a child, seeing rats that weren't there. And much like Magley's family, Eric and his uncle fled the Congo in 1990 to escape the war, and they settled in London. And his uncle would talk more to him about the kindoke and witchcraft before he passed away. Throughout their relationship, Magley said he grew more obsessed with sorcery and witchcraft and began having dreams of his brother killing him. To rid himself of what he believed to be evil spirits, he moved around London to a bunch of different apartments to outrun them. It didn't work, so he began consulting with a pastor for help. Now, that's just a little background into the culprits of this. So the two got engaged, moved in together in a London flat, and the family, Magley's family, was fairly excited. They didn't know all of Eric's past. So they decide to send Magley's siblings to spend Christmas with them. Enter 15-year-old Christy. Now, this is Christy is a boy's name, so don't get confused. Christy's a girl. Christy.
That's a boy's name here.
Is a boy's name. Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
It's
I
pretty
have an uncle Christy. So.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Mm.
So along with his siblings, which include Kelly, his 20-year-old sister, an 11-year-old sister, a 13-year-old brother, and a 22-year-old autistic brother. A few days before Christmas, the siblings arrived at the London home. And by all accounts, the first day went fine. Suddenly, Eric's mood changed, and him and Magley started accusing the siblings of being possessed with kindoke. The siblings were
because he borrowed his pencil.
Exactly. So the siblings...
You take your brother's pencil?
The siblings were all born in Paris. They had no idea what the fuck kindoke was, and were extremely confused.
Is that not the game? Is that not the game you play when you have like all the tiles and you have to match them up and then you slowly...
That's Mahjong.
Game? It's Sudoku. That's what I was thinking of. But anyway.
So all the siblings, I don't say children because they're in their teens, all the siblings rejected the claims. So, of course, what you do with witches, you torture them. So they were made to pray constantly. They were refused food and drink. They were beaten, and at one point, even forced to jump out of a window, which I believe to be a second-story window, just to see if they could fly. Because, witches. Eventually,
hey kids, come visit us in London. Have a nice holiday. Get out the fucking window.
Eventually, Kelly and her 11-year-old sister confessed to being witches to avoid beatings, which worked for them. Dan, you and I have covered a lot of times. People confess to a lot of stupid shit to keep you from crushing their head. Unfortunately, this did not work for Christy. So the same night the sisters confessed, Christy was beaten and involuntarily wet himself. Now, once Eric found his underwear, he took this as a sign that Christy was the one who brought the kindoke into his house and began to focus solely on him, even encouraging the other siblings to join in. Over the next day or two, Christy would endure some of the most horrific tortures. So they smashed his head, face, and back with ceramic tiles. They took hammers and chisels to his limbs. They cut all over his body with knives, shoved a metal bar in his mouth and used it to break teeth. And they used pliers to twist off pieces of his ear.
What? How would you twist? What?
Yeah.
They used pliers to twist off pieces of his ear. Phil's sitting there now with a
Apparently it's
face
just a
again.
one ear.
It's usually the faces that I tend to pull, and Phil, I have to listen to this shit. I have to listen to this shit almost every week, right? Like
Phil, this is what I do to Dan. Every other week, this is what I do to Dan.
Yeah.
Wait, no. Here's the funny thing. No, like this is like Dan, you're choosing. Like you're like, I'm gonna do this podcast with my buddy.
Yeah.
Listen to these weird fucking shit. Wow. And I'm pretty sure you guys make this explicit just because of the stories you're talking about.
Oh yeah, it's explicit. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But people are actually listening to your podcast.
Yeah,
you know,
And
You
they're
know why,
getting a
Phil?
kick out
Yeah.
of listening to torture.
because it's funny as shit, Phil. That's why it's really goddamn funny.
It's
Aside
sad.
from it's
like Kevin, you have a great voice for telling stories.
Thank you.
It is amazing.
yeah, he does. Yeah, he really does. That's the thing. Yeah, a friend of mine said it to me as well. man.
Like it sounds like you have like a Morgan Freeman type voice. You know, like one of those voices I wish someone would narrate my life through, right? Because
Yeah.
it sounds so great. As you're telling, using pliers to twist off pieces of his ear. It's like you're so like.
All I
is
can
just
think of
something
now
I know
is-
normally every day someone does this. It's so like you're so cool with it, and I'm like, that just makes it even more twisted. Like
Yeah.
how calm you are, but I realize you probably you freaked out about this earlier.
Oh, when
you
I read it,
about
I was hand to mouth reading it, damn near tears in my eyes, thinking because this is a 15-year-old kid. It's just something you got to kind
Jesus.
of read over and over and over before you almost get desensitized to this specific story.
Like how can like
Luckily, most of the
Like,
stuff that we talk about on here happened centuries ago, and half of the shit didn't actually even happen. We found out through a few of them that we've covered already that they didn't really even exist when they were supposed to. So it doesn't hurt as bad to read about
but
it.
still
but,
like this is obviously something that did happen.
Oh yeah. I'm not done yet.
So continue.
And all I can think of now, because of what he said, is Morgan Freeman introducing the award-winning podcast mogul. When I first met the award-winning podcast mogul, Phil Bennett.
Oh, all right. So by the time it was all over, Christy had over 130 separate wounds, and it said that his limbs were basically just strips of flesh hanging from his body. So by Christmas Eve, this, again, 15-year-old boy was begging them to just let him die. Meanwhile, Eric began forcing the siblings to clean the blood from the apartment, but there's no way they could get even a fraction of it. Later that night, Eric would make a call to Pierre and Jacqueline, the parents, telling them that Christy was possessed, and if they did not come and get him, he would kill him. Parents obviously in disbelief. Now they had to go through the process of trying to get a rental car to make the 6-hour drive to London on Christmas. It was a difficult challenge to say the least. Most of the places they looked at were closed for the holiday.
And
So
now,
makes
now
sense.
starts the torture part of the story. Trying to get to London at Christmas.
There you go. That's the real horror. Traffic.
Dealing with hurts on Christmas
But-
Eve.
Wait. When Kevin, I just want to reiterate. When did this story take place?
2010.
I had thought you had said like the parents were born in 18.
No. The siblings were born in 19. The Magali and Eric were born in 1983.
I don't think there were
Same year
rental
I was
car
born.
companies around back then, Phil.
Yeah, same year I was born. But this all happened in 2000.
No, that's why I wanted to verify.
They had to go to
because I heard the rental.
Hertz
I'm like,
Rent-A-Coach and get a horse truck.
Yeah. Rent a horse.
like, okay, that makes more sense. Car.
Instead, it was a 3-day
So this
trip.
took place 12 years ago?
Yeah. Uh-huh. So trying to get a rental car.
Look at this. Kev, look at this torture noob. Look at the torture noob. Look at him.
Phil
Looks like
has
he's going to throw up.
His head in his hand in disbelief. So trying to get to London would ultimately be in vain. So Eric put all the siblings in a bathtub and started spraying them down with water, letting the tub fill up to the brim. Now, after the two torturers left the room, Christie, fraught with physical and mental exhaustion, let his head drop under the water and drowned. They called an ambulance. Why, I don't know. But when the authorities arrived, they saw a scene straight out of a horror movie. Blood literally everywhere. Floors, walls, even the ceiling was splattered with it. And Christie was pronounced dead Christmas Day, 2010. So they both ended up pleading guilty to bodily harm on the grounds of diminished responsibility because apparently at some point in his life, Eric had brain damage, but this was rejected, and the case had to go to a jury trial. The jury consisted of 7 women, 5 men. The judge said due to the gruesome evidence of the horrific crimes that these jurors were excused from ever having to serve jury duty again. So, I mean, there's a plus, I guess. Eric's defense claimed his brain injury, his cultural upbringing, and schizophrenia diminished his responsibility for these actions, and Magali's defense argued that she was manipulated and she did not believe in witchcraft. But Kelly, the next oldest sister, testified against her sister and said that she had no pity as she spoke of the lack of remorse from her sister while her and her siblings begged her to stop as she brutally beat and tortured them. Now here's kind of the out of left field. At the trial, a young woman, Naomi Longa, and her boyfriend stayed with the couple 2 years prior to the murder in 2008 and was accused of, again, being possessed by kindoke because she was biting her nails. The 3 days that she stayed with Eric, she was refrained from eating and sleeping. He and Magali would sit and pray with her. Her hair, which came all the way down to the middle of her back, was forcibly cut short to release the kindoke. Luckily, she was able to call her mother and get rescued, get away. Unfortunately, for Magali, the result in this punishment for allowing her to leave, Eric forced her to eat off the floor and gave her a black eye. So she went to stay at a women's refuge. And I said earlier that the relationship didn't last very long. But 3 months later, she went back. And then they got engaged. So that kind of gives the jury, say, well, she wasn't manipulated because she fucking came back after she got out. She knew what was going on was wrong. And she came back. Eric Bikabui was eventually sentenced to a minimum of 30 years in prison, and Magali was sentenced to a minimum of 25 years. The judge told the couple that the case was very sadistic, and belief in witchcraft, however genuine, cannot excuse the assault and killing of any other human being. Merry Christmas, everybody.
That's pretty cool.
So...
Phil doesn't know what he fucking got himself into.
Yeah.
Like, if this was, like, something that happened in the 1800s, like from 1801 to 1899, I could understand, I could understand it. Like, there's an idea, like, culturally and all that, the, like, evolution.
Trust me, Phil, you still
something
wouldn't.
that took
From what I've
place.
experienced, you would still not understand. You would still be like, what the fuck?
No. I would still be in disbelief that people could believe it, but it would be easier to understand.
I
could
why they
rationalize
would
it.
do it because the belief system
Well,
was a lot different back.
I'm sorry, yes and no. It
This
isn't. It
isn't
isn't. It's,
20
like, look at Catholicism again. I don't want to beat the old dead horse that I like to beat,
No,
but people still believe all that shit. You know what I mean? There's tons
No,
of that
I
stuff,
understand
you know?
that. No, but there's people aren't like we're seeing a rise in the U.S. of extreme fundamentalism with the with Christianity, but there's like I have a hard time believing, and I'm pretty sure you have stories to count this of people. Not even no fuck it. I can't even say that. This is just like
We gotta get Phil back on.
I feel so sorry for the children.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the
I was gonna say,
parents,
Like
yeah.
the judge is right. The people the jury on this, for the fact that they had to sit through and see what these poor children went through. Yes,
Phil.
First of all, they should have got tripled the friggin' pay. Right, plus a 12-week vacation somewhere.
You don't get paid for
on
jury
top
duty,
of
do you?
Not having to serve.
Oh, you do over here. I think you get like $11 a day or something if you have to miss work.
Alright.
So that'd be a big.
Oh, well, yeah.
They cover your.
yeah.
They,
Cover your work pay.
You get a payment or stipend
Yeah,
or
something
something
like
to cover your work.
Yeah,
pay.
sorry. Sorry,
But,
I
like-
thought you meant just in general they paid. Yeah.
No.
No. They pay
was
you
gonna say-
to cover your work.
Yes, same here. But I was going to say, Phil, if you think that's bad, listen back on our Ling Chi episode and think about when you listen to it, right? Think about what happens to one person, and think about the fact then that there was an incident in it to do with an awful lot more than just one person, and that same thing happened to all these other people. Yeah, and
The
that
most
will
metal
make you,
fucking thing you ever heard in your life, by the way.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
Like, I can't
That's so
believe they did it
badass.
to a child.
Yeah?
Like this for me, it's like doing it to an adult. I'm like, okay, it's an adult to another adult. Like I can see the rationale, but you're doing it to a 15-year-old child. And it's not even your child.
Yeah, that's the thing.
No,
Some of
like
those cases like
Beyonce's
that make
little
it
brother,
even worse.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
Like this, like doing it to your own child, that's a next level. But taking in, like, doing it to another child that you think is possessed without even first verifying with the parents, like, where do you get off on the, like, thinking you have the sanctimonious right to put your hands on another, like, when I'm talking about a teacher smacking a bottom, like back in those days, like smacking the bottom or like using a ruler to hit the hands. I'm
Rapping
like, okay,
the knuckles. Yeah.
that's fine. Like, do I believe in corporal punishment? No. But like a slap on the wrist, because you did something bad, that's a punishment.
Action
That, I would be like,
consequences.
Yep.
yeah, there's action consequence. Do I prove of it? No. But I'm like, you didn't go past one hit. One hit is the no. Like if it's one hit, fine. I'm fine with that. My dad always said the first hit is for you're learning a lesson. The second one is in anger. You never want to hit in anger, right? Your child.
First
of all, you're
cut
never
is
going to
the
hit a child.
deepest.
But right, the first hit is the deepest. Yeah, that's all you have to hit. One, you break the trust.
I was going to
But,
say,
like,
I'll tell you a little thing here, Phil, that make you feel a little bit worse. It makes you feel a bit better about this particular story.
Worse.
Right?
I love that. Not make me feel
no.
better. Make me feel.
No. It'll make you feel better about this story to a certain extent, right? So this guy in Kevin's story had his belief system, which is what was the engineering, the kind of the fuel to the fire, effectively got him started, right? So this isn't my story, my other story now, but I remember reading about a case that happened here where a guy had taken a kid, and now this guy didn't do this for religious reasons or anything like this, handcuffed the kid to a radiator, which was on and left roaring hot,
Of course.
poured boiling water on the kid, and went at the kid's legs and knees with a cheese grater.
Nice. Wow.
I should have covered that
That's
for my
something
story,
else.
but it was
Yeah,
a bit
you should have
too
covered
much
that
for
for
me.
your story.
No, but it was a bit too
Please
much even for me.
tell
I remember
me.
reading about it and being really angry, like very angry
Yeah.
about it. And like
Please tell me the
I've
punishment.
cut myself
that
with cheese grater. I can't
fucking-
remember, but I've cut myself with cheese graters, and it's like, like no, sick.
Never got myself
shit.
with a cheese
Like,
grater.
that
I've
guy,
got
that
myself
guy,
with a
that guy just.
mandolin before, but never a cheese grater.
Yeah, well, on a microplane, I did before, a few
Oh,
times.
ooh.
I've one of
Yeah.
my thumbs is wonky because I've done it several times. Yeah, but the difference here being the fact that guy just did it just because he's a sick fuck. That other guy did it because it was based on mentality and methodology kind of thing that was ingrained into him from not only him being a complete fucking lunatic, but also down to his religious upbringing or whatever way you want to describe it. Not that there's any excuse, but at least for his one, there was something there that kind of instigated that.
Yeah, like
nature.
There's at least a level like you can understand. His upbringing was that these specific things mean witchcraft, and witchcraft these are the punishment. Like there's like a
if
there
you
is
have
a
that
causal
ingrained in you,
response.
then-
Like it makes like as twisted as it is, there's a logic to it. As twisted logic it is, there's
to him there's a logic to it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas this
So
guy
fucked up, though.
just Anyways, let's move on to your second story,
So-
Dan, so I can have more crazy responses.
That was not a fun story, but it was fun to watch Phil try to wrap his head around it.
It hurts. It hurts. I'm telling you, people, it hurts. And also the
Right.
people listening to this. Why are you torturing yourself with this knowledge? Please write in at torturepod
Yes.
at gmail.com
There
and
you
tell
go.
us why you torture yourself. I want to know why. And the first 100 will get a personalized shout out on this podcast.
Yes, they will.
And if you have a torture story that you want to share, please send it in at torturepod at gmail.com and they'll read it out on the podcast.
All expense
or
paid
maybe
trip
invite
to
you to read
Canada
it themselves.
To meet Phil. Paid by.
No, will you
paid
stop
by
with the meat,
Phil
Phil?
Betters.
No.
All right, Dan, go
paid
ahead and
by
get to your
PepsiCo.
second one.
We are just kidding. We are not running that promotion.
This is not a real jet.
I will not be caught in that web. So, I do not have the same glorious, sexy story reading voice, the lilt that is Kevin Young, but I'm going to try. This one here is a bit longer. Right, so this is based around St. Patrick's weekend, the Irish Christmas. And this is the one, it's the tale of 4 people, their personal relationships, and 1 of their gruesome deaths. So this is, the 4 people are, I want to say, the partner, the mother, and then the 2 daughters. Okay?
Okay.
So we'll start with the partner.
Sure.
In December of 1996, a man named Shalila Salim arrived in Ireland. Salim was a Somalian man whose family had been killed in Mogadishu during the Somali Civil War. But all of that was bullshit because his name was actually Farah Swali Noor, and he was actually from Kenya, and his family were actually very much still alive. Farah...
Well, now you just ruined the story.
He wants you to
No.
send $100
This
to save
isn't
the
a...
friends.
yeah.
He has $1 million in a bank account and can't access it, but he wants your help.
I must actually find an
$50.
email. I actually got an email before from some guy pretending to be a colonel in the American military, offering me, saying that he'd gotten loads of barrels of oil over in Iraq and he wanted to store them somewhere and give me money to store them. And I wrote back as if I was like private first class Daniel. It was like, I cannot do that. It was really funny. I must find the email and send it on to you sometime. But so Farah, the whole thing was discovered basically that this guy wasn't who he said he was, right? So Farah's deportation was ordered by the Department of Justice, but he appealed and was granted Irish citizenship. Now here's a really fucked up thing for you, Phil, right? He was granted Irish citizenship in March of 1999 because he had fathered an Irish-born child. He would go on to father a few more children, but at the time he had 4 previous convictions for a number of offences, such as intoxication, threatening and abusive behaviour and assault. The child that he fathered was because in 1997, Farah raped a mentally disabled 16-year-old Chinese girl who would later give birth to his son. And then he also ended up having 2 other children to 2 other women that he raped. He faced 8 charges of disorder and assault, one of which involved sexual assault with a knife, and he was convicted 3 times but he never served a single minute of jail time. Now, the good old Irish justice system, he basically was being deported. He was not deported because he raped a woman and had a kid as a result of it. And then he still didn't get locked up. So, he was described by the Gardaí, as our Garda Síochána, who are the Irish cops, as being particularly violent towards women. In 2002, Farah entered a relationship with a woman called Kathleen Mulhall, who was formerly Kathleen Ward, who is the mother in the story. So Kathleen
All right.
was originally married to John Mulhall. The marriage didn't last, and John was apparently abusive towards her, and so the marriage eventually broke down. John moved out of the family home, taking some of their children. I never found exactly how many children they have. I didn't bother my arse looking into it because it's completely irrelevant. There's only 2 of them that actually matter. So John moved out of the family home, taking
More than 2. They've had more than 2
They
children.
had more than 2 kids.
We only care about 2 of them. Okay.
Yeah. Taking some of the children with him, while Farah, the mother's new partner, moved into the family home. Kathleen, the mother, would soon move to County Cork, which is on the west coast of Ireland, with the now partner Farah. John, the old husband, would move back into the family home, but Kathleen and Farah would return then in around 2004. So it's a space of about 2 years between them getting together, them moving to Cork, them moving back to Dublin. Kathleen was again a victim of domestic abuse, as Farah allegedly subjected her to irregular beatings. Again, very violent towards women.
He does have a history, so I can believe that.
Yep. So next up we have the 2 daughters. We have Linda and Charlotte. Linda, who was 30 years of age at the time of the murder that we'll be getting to, was the mother of 4 children herself. She was a long sufferer of alcohol abuse and a heroin addict. The relationship with the father of the children had dissolved, and she had entered a relationship with another man by the name of Wayne Kinsella, who abused all of them. There's a reported incident of Wayne assaulting one of the children with an electrical flex. If you want to Google what an electrical flex is, you can. You will see it. It's like it's a flexible steel thing that wires go through that's used in construction. Basically, very
like
very
conduit,
hard,
yeah.
solid thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically, they'd think about beating anyone with that, let alone a child. So
fucking hell.
The abuse was investigated, and the children were taken into the care of the social services. And Wayne served 7 years for his violence towards the children. In 1996, though, Wayne received an 8-year prison sentence for murdering a retired auctioneer, and would later receive life imprisonment for stabbing a 29-year-old Adil Asali in a field very close to where I actually grew up. It's only about 5 minutes down the road from where I grew up. He stabbed this guy to get. Now, he killed this guy because that other guy, Adil, was involved in the murder of Wayne's brother. So, the whole load of, So, that is the relationships of the first daughter and the shit that she had to deal with, right? Charlotte, who was the younger of the 2 sisters, was 21 at the time that the murder took place. And she herself had a long history of drug and alcohol abuse. She also herself had a number of minor convictions, such as criminal damage, public order offences, and was involved in prostitution. To basically sum up the 2 daughters, though, they had very tough level, very troubled lives, an awful lot of alcohol abuse, an awful lot of physical, sexual abuse, all that load of shit. So, we move forward to the 20th of March 2005, St. Patrick's weekend. Kathleen, her 2 daughters, Charlotte and Linda, and her partner Farah, were heavily drinking on St. Patrick's weekend around Dublin city centre. They'd been drinking vodka and coke while walking around Dublin city. Kathleen and her daughter Charlotte, who again is the younger of the 2, 21 at this stage, decided they wanted to take ecstasy. They were on the quays in Dublin on the River Liffey, and they decided to pop some ecstasy.
Yeah.
They then decided to return to Kathleen's flat, which was, I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's about 15-20 minute walk from the from where they were, from the quays, from the River Liffey in the middle of the city. They returned to Kathleen's flat to take more ecstasy, and Kathleen ended up crushing up an ecstasy tablet, and she put it into Farah's drink, so as that they would, quote, all be on the same buzz. Because he obviously didn't want to take some or something, I don't know. But anyway, so she spiked his ass. Linda.
Give me a second.
Yeah.
Phil has to catch up.
I just have some questions. I just want to... You know what? Never mind.
No. That was not an
So we
audio
got
failure,
two
people.
who are in their
That was a
30s. The
film.
daughters are in their 30s, right?
Yeah, so one of the daughters
That was a
is
film.
30. The oldest of the two daughters is 30. The younger of the two in the story is 21 at this time.
All right, cool. How old is mom?
I don't know.
More, yeah,
Probably not.
50s, 40s, mid 40s.
We'll say she's probably 50 at the youngest.
Let's say I can Google it if you want, but I never
Nah,
looked it
No,
up because I
let's say
didn't.
let's say she's 48. She's 48.
Let's say you're mid to late 40s.
For Phil's mental.
For my sanity,
We'll say
48.
48. Fair enough. All right.
Where was I? So they returned to Kathleen's flat to take more ecstasy, and with Kathleen crushing up the tablet of ecstasy and putting it into Farah's drink, so they would, as I said already, all be on the same buzz. Okay?
Right.
So Linda, the older daughter, and Farah were sitting beside each other on a 2-seater sofa, with Charlotte sitting on the arm. Farah proceeded to touch Linda in a sexual manner, speaking in her ear, putting his arms around her, and he was refusing to let her go. An argument ensued as Kathleen started screaming at Farah, and during the fight, she instructed the daughters to just kill him for me. Charlotte, the younger of the two daughters, picked up a Stanley knife and sliced Farah's throat.
Jesus Christ.
He fell to the ground. Linda picked up a hammer and proceeded to hit him in the head numerous times. Kathleen looked on but did not participate, nor did she intervene. Farah was reported he'd stabbed a minimum of 27 times, but pathologists believe it may have been more as they could not examine the full body. Here's why, right?
Oh, shit.
So,
What?
the daughters...
So for everybody who's listening, if you didn't raise an eyebrow or have a quizzical look at why couldn't they examine the body, here's why.
Here's why. Right? The daughters proceeded to drag Farah's corpse into the bath, where they began to dismember him. They removed his head, his limbs, and his penis with a kitchen knife and a hammer.
Seeing
They
a trend
used-
for today.
Yep. They used towels to try and stem the flow of the blood, and after a number of hours of dismembering, they placed all of his body parts in black plastic bags and sports bags, with the exception of his head. They threw all of the body parts into what is known here as called the Royal Canal. It is a man-made canal that was originally designed to move freight and passengers from Dublin city up to County Longford, which is in the middle of the country, and it connects up with the longest river in the country, the River Shannon, which basically distributes off to loads of different places. So, but disposing of his body in this manner would have taken several trips. So if you were to Google this, you could see where the apartment was that the killing took place, and a little map. And the Royal Canal is a couple of streets north of that. So they would have had to have walked up and down, up and down, up and down quite a few times with these bags to dump them
Just
into the
carry
river.
bags of body parts.
Yep. They took the head by bus to an area in Dublin called Tala. Right now, I'm going to go into Google Maps live right now while we're doing this, right? And I am going to go and Google Map the route just to give you an idea how far away this is, right? So I'm going to do from an area that's right around the corner, which is going to be mentioned in a minute. Now, it is 23 kilometers, roughly, by... Oh, hold on a second. This is the quickest route here. Actually, is... apparently, it's around an hour by bus.
God damn.
Because it's going through the middle of Dublin city centre, or you can go around the ring road, blah, blah, all this load of different shit, right? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So it's about an hour on the bus. So they took the head on the bus to Tala, and they walked through.
Please tell me they're still rolling on X at this
I,
point.
this is hours later, Phil. They're guaranteed it's worn off at this stage. Like, this is like, it took them hours to dismember the body, right? So They went to a place that's known as it's called the Square, which is a big ass shopping mall, as you would call it. We call them shopping centers. So it's a big shopping center called the Square.
Sure.
And it's this old ad back in the day because it's all there in the Square because it was one of the biggest shopping centers at first. Nothing's really in the Square anymore. It's a piece of shit. But anyway, they basically walked through the shopping mall center carrying this head in a bag, and they went through it and they went to a local park where Charlotte dug a hole using one of the knives, and they proceeded to bury the head in the hole. They then disposed of the hammer and the knives in a pond nearby in the park. Linda, the older again of the two sisters, would later return, dig up the head, place it in her son's school bag, and then transfer it to a field near a housing estate that's in Tala, where she proceeded to break it up even further with a hammer and then bury it again. Linda later stated that she smashed his head into several pieces and distributed them into different bins / trash cans in the Phoenix Park, which is a massive park in Dublin. Right?
Yeah.
So, the killing itself only came to light 10 days after, because Farah's leg was seen floating in the canal a few hundred yards away from Croke Park, and Croke Park is a very famous sports stadium here, and it is literally right around the corner from where they did the killing. It's right up beside where they would have dumped the body parts in, so this body part didn't get very far in those 10 days. The Gardaí recovered 7 body parts, and they only got to identify Farah through media appeals. Person recognised the t-shirt that was still on the torso. And it was a person that was one of the only people that Farah knew when he first came into the country back years ago. So this person recognised the t-shirt because it was what he was wearing, and it's not like apparently it wasn't like a normal t-shirt or some shit like that.
Right.
His head and his penis were never found. So the entire family, including the father John, were arrested in connection with the murder. They all denied any knowledge of the killing, but a few weeks later, Linda admitted to her involvement in the crime. Gardaí then searched the house that the murder took place in, and they found blood stains, and through DNA analysis they obviously confirmed it was Farah's. And upon Linda's confession, her mother Kathleen fled the country. Now bear in mind that this whole entire thing, if you recall, let's go back, took place in March 2005. Kathleen would not be found until 2008, living in England. In December of 2005...
Wait, hold on. Stop. Stop. She flees the country.
Yep.
And only goes to England.
Yeah.
The next island over.
There's a very specific reason why she went to England. Right, so...
Okay,
the reason,
good. Okay.
The reason she went to England, right, is because Kathleen was originally a member of the travelling community, right? There's an awful lot of members of the travelling community also over in England. So it's believed she went over there to hide out amongst members of the travelling community.
Okay, so she went to her community. Okay, it makes sense. Okay, now it makes sense.
Right? So because her family originated from she herself,
England,
like, no, well, it's not actually, the family didn't originate from England. It's the fact that there's a large concentration of travelling community over in England. So it's thought that she went out and hid out with them. Where was I here? Yeah, so she's found living in England. So in December of 2005, Linda and Charlotte were charged with the murder of Farah Noor, and their father, John, hanged himself in the Phoenix Park out of shame of what happened. The trial took place in October 2006, Linda being found guilty of manslaughter. Bear in mind, she's the one that did all the work with the hammer after the throat had been slit, and her sister Charlotte was found guilty of just straight up murder, because her would have been the killing.
But she killed him. Essentially, she killed him. The hammer blows were just additional things that didn't really matter, because cutting of the throat is what killed him.
Most likely he would have died from the cutting of the throat, but chances are the hammer blows probably killed him. But anyway, Charlotte was given the mandatory life sentence and Linda was given 15 years. Their mother, Kathleen, would eventually receive 5 years imprisonment after pleading guilty to assisting in the cleanup of a crime scene to conceal evidence. Now, there was also a whole load of hullabaloo online after, where one of the sisters, I can't remember which one it was, I'm pretty sure it was Linda, with photos of her jokingly holding a knife to the throat of, or maybe it was Charlotte, jokingly holding a knife to the throat of a fellow prisoner. That was put up on social media. There's a whole load of shit about it. But due to the manner in which the girls killed Farah, the media dubbed them the Scissor Sisters. So it's very well known.
That's a completely different thing. that's a different thing altogether.
Innocent media. Oh, I love it.
Yep.
Fucking shit.
But that's the end of my second story.
Pretty cool.
I just want to cover something.
Sure.
Dude who got killed got his just desserts. Pretty much is what the story
Sure.
is.
Yeah, so the whole thing being that what they did was completely fucked up.
Also,
I don't
if
give
I
a
have a
shit.
kid
Like,
in
it's completely
Ireland-
fucked up. Yeah. I'll claim to be your
this
kid.
is
If you
just
want citizenship, I'll pretend to be your kid, Phil. It's all good.
Yeah, that won't work.
Yeah.
You guarantee it won't work. You're a little older than me, Danny.
Am I?
Wait, okay, that's good to know. That if I'm about to say the year. Yeah, I just turned 37.
Oh, I'm younger than you, so go fuck yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
I literally turned
shit, really?
35 3 days ago.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, I know.
I
I know.
wasn't
I
sure
don't
because-
look as
well, I'm
pretty
not
as you,
sure about-
Phil, but you know.
No, you have a
God
fucking family.
damn.
I don't. I feel like I'm 18. Okay, people tell me I look 26, and I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah,
Anyways,
I'm married.
let's
into
go
this.
to Kevin's last story so I can have my brain melted again.
All right, let me give my true crime voice on. And lastly, we go to 1993 to get the origins of a torture that retail and restaurant workers have to endure every holiday season. Starting earlier and earlier every year, this torment starts off as fun and joyous, but after just a few rotations in a single day, the true horror of their ordeal finally sinks in, and the deep depression begins to take hold. Yes, to finish off our Christmas episode, we will cover the birth and the reign of terror that is Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You.
Yes. My wife's favorite Christmas song.
It is the bane of every person who has to work
Yes, it is.
where music is playing.
Yeah.
Like if there's music playing, you just spy, and you have to work there for 12 hours, and all you hear is "All I Want for Christmas" at least a dozen
Every
times an
45
hour.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I worked in retail. I haven't worked in retail in over 15 years now, and I'm still scarred because I worked in a shop that is very well known here. Any Irish and even English people here will know of Penny's, the great shop that it is. Apparently a US store is open as well a while back. But anyway, it's very cheap clothes and stuff like that, and they're even cheaper when it comes to things like the music that they play and the Christmas ornaments that they get in. And I worked in the Christmas section one year, and everything that played a jingle, everybody kept coming in and winding them up and playing jingles, and they were famous songs,
Yeah.
but in really poor jingle form in these little toys. And that was one of the big ones. And that and Rudolph Red-Nosed Reindeer was the other one. But you could hear just a single note, like nearly like a polyphonic ringtone of Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You for about 7 to 8 hours a day, 5-6 days a week for 3 months. I hate my life.
All right, let's hear this story of Mariah Carey.
Following the success of her 1993 album, Music Box, Carey and her management of Columbia Records, including Carey's then husband, Tommy Mottola, head of Columbia's parent label, Sony Music Entertainment, began planning further projects. The group discussed recording a Christmas album, but hesitated, as such albums were typically released towards when an artist's careers are waning. Carrie's songwriter partner of over 4 years, Walter Afanasieff, said, "Back then you didn't have a lot of artists with Christmas albums. I wasn't known as the scene at all back then, and there was nobody who did, new big Christmas songs. Who we were going to release it as kind of a everyday, hey, we're putting out a Christmas album. No big deal. I have no idea what he sounds like. That's just what I'm guessing." After
He's looking at you, kid. Hey.
Carrie and Afanasieff began writing and composing songs for Merry Christmas in mid-1994. Carrie decorated the home she shared with Mottola with Christmas decorations, feeling she could enter the holiday spirit and make her performance more authentic. All I Want for Christmas Is You was recorded that August and took Carrie and Afanasieff a total of 15 minutes to write and compose. At first, Afanasieff admitted that he was puzzled and blanched as to where Carrie wanted to take the melody and the vocal scales, though she was adamant in her direction for the song. In an interview with Billboard, Afanasieff described the type of relationship he and Carrie shared in the studio as songwriters. "It was always the same sort of system with us. We would write the nucleus of the song, the melody, primary music, and then some of the words were there as we finished writing it. I started playing some rock and roll piano and started boogie-woogieing with my left hand and inspired Mariah to come up with a melodic, I don't want a lot for Christmas. And then we started singing and playing around with these rock and roll boogie songs, which immediately came out to be the nucleus of what we would end up being All I Want for Christmas Is You. That one went very public. It was an easier song to write than some of the other ones. It was very formulaic, not a lot of chord changes. I tried to make it a little more unique, putting in some special chords that you don't hear a lot of, which made it unique and special. Then for the next week or two, Mariah would call me and say, "What do you think about this bit?" We would take a little bit until she got the lyrics all nice, coordinated, and done. And then we just waited until the sessions began, and we were in the summer of '94. We were together in New York, and I started recording, and that's when we first heard the microphone singing, and the rest is history.
I like you managed to go from a New Yorker like, "Hey, I'm walking here," all the way to what's that fucking giant chicken? I say, sir.
Southern.
Yeah, the southern.
Southern chicken.
Yeah. I said Mariah.
Afanasieff flew back to California, where he finished the song's programming and production. Originally, he had a live band play the drums and other instruments, with the thought of giving it a more raw and effective sound. He was unhappy with the results of the recording and subsequently scrapped the effort and used his original personal arrangement and programmed all the instruments heard on the song, with the exception of background vocals, including the piano, drums, and triangle. While Carrie continued writing material in her rented home in the Hamptons, Afanasieff completed the song's programming and awaited the rendezvous with her a final time in order to layer the harmonizing and background vocals. It was released October 29th, 1994, just before Halloween, beginning its reign of terror and subsequent overtaking of the obvious superior holiday. It's been terrorizing retail and restaurant workers ever since. So there's that.
That's the true horror story of tonight's episode right there. We couldn't get anything real raw or dirty on Tay Tay, so we had to go Mariah.
Yeah, so we had to go. Yeah.
Sounds of the Season by Taylor is just too horrifying for our listeners. We didn't want to scar Phil. First time out.
No, please, you've already scarred me enough. My God.
All right, everybody, that's all we have. We're running a little long on this one, so that's all we're going to have. Phil, you want to let people know how they can get a hold of you if they want to?
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to thank both Dan and Kevin for, one, constantly talking about me on your podcast.
Oh, every time.
Finally having me on
We're not going to talk about you anymore
now. You guys
now.
are amazing.
No.
We got what we wanted.
That's it. It's done.
Yeah.
I'm done now. They're going to fixate on someone else. But if you are interested in just learning about podcasting or growing podcasting, and starting a podcast like Dan and Kevin here about torture or about anything, specifically Mariah Carey, make sure you join my Facebook group. It's called the Better Method of Daily Audience Growth for Independent Podcasters. You can go to it at philbetterinc.com/Facebook group, and you can sign up today. Again, that is philbetterinc.com/Facebook group. But if you join, if you're not a podcaster or anything, you love this podcast, send the guys here an email at torturepod@gmail.com. That's the most important thing you can do, because the communication between listener and podcaster is so special. You guys help drive the show, so the more you interact with this show, the better the episodes come. So let them know what you enjoy, let them know what you don't like, let them know what kind of stories you want to hear. You guys drive the show. Dan and Kevin can only do so much, and they're doing it for you. So the little bit of info that you can send them at torturepod@gmail.com will feed this podcast and make it better for you guys. So do your part, send in that email, and you'll see a better podcast come out of it. So I want to thank both Dan and Kevin for having me on the podcast. For you guys listening,
Thank you, Phil.
and specifically for you guys sending in your email at torturepod@gmail.com. Thank you.
For a trip to go
well,
make
you know
Phil better.
I couldn't.
Yeah, I was going to
couldn't have
say,
said it better myself.
thanks, Phil, as well for coming on. But I was going to say, but the whole emailing in thing, obviously email in, but see, do you want Phil back again? Do you want me back again? You're sick, that's the bigger thing I'd want to know about. Do you want to hear more stories from me? Do you want to hear another story from Phil about headless Canadians?
There's a few headless Canadian stories, I'm pretty sure.
That's where the floppy-headed Canadian South Park thing came from, obviously.
Yeah, buddy.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much. Send an email in to torturepod@gmail.com. All the links down below will be here.
Pretty soon, Phil will be inviting us in, calling us the podcast moguls.
Do you guys want to be, and Phil's going to contact us, do you guys want to be on Torture today?
Yeah, next week. You guys want to be on Torture?
All right, hit for our next...
That's our podcast. Not anymore. The podcast mogul takes it over.
Hit for our next episode. Joan of Arc had some pretty fucked up friends. So... take that for what you will. This is our last episode of 2022. We want to thank everybody for listening. We appreciate it. We love all you guys. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah, joyous Kwanzaa, radical Ramadan, and have a happy and safe New Year. Don't drink and drive, please. And we'll talk to you guys next year. All right?
And to my pagan fellows,
yeah, and don't.
happy Yule.
That's right.
I was gonna say, don't make people jump out the window just because you think they're witches, or chop your friends' heads off.
All right, that's all we got. We'll see you.
Email us. Bye bye.